Well, this is it. This is our very first episode of Comic Book Squares, where we're going to review books about independent books that might not get as much play in the general review sphere, like Marvel and DC stuff. So we're going to try and give a voice to those that don't have a voice. And so our first book that we're going to talk about is Not All Robots. And we're going to do this is a 5-issue limited series, and we're going to do issue 4. So right off the bat, what did everybody think?
I really liked it. I really did. The first thing I thought of when by the time I finished it, did you guys ever watch Animatrix? There was some, so that the animated stories behind the Matrix. So it was like all the stuff leading up to the Robot Wars. It kind of reminded me of that in some ways, because there were like a world established with these long-term relationships with robots that have been just kind of deteriorating over the years. So
interesting.
Some similar, not complete similarities, obviously, but some similarities there that I was noticing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of did not familiar with the Matrix Animatrix piece of it, but definitely I think the concept of the robots, where some of them start to become, kind of out of date, and you've got new versions coming out, things like that. I think that relates. I don't know. Sometimes I look for deeper meanings in that and how it kind of relates to that concept when we think even of cultures, right? Certain cultures, that certain beliefs of grandparents as folks get older, and it's kind of contradictory to the throwaway society and things like that. Like, oh, you buy a appliance and it breaks, you just throw it away. There's no attempt to fix anything anymore. And it seems that way a little bit with this storyline. It has an interesting spin to it. I like it.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's interesting you bring that up, because when I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, this is definitely, they're making some sort of an allegory to society. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because that's very interesting about, how we treat not, appliances. But when you said grandparents and, we set them aside because they have as much value, I guess that's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, I love it when sci-fi does that, when it makes a commentary about society. I think that's when sci-fi is at its best. So yeah, that is definitely one thing I really did enjoy about it, for sure. But you, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. Now, obviously, I've kept up with the whole series, so I can tell you that from the outset, you could tell that there was some foreshadowing going on. There was, the robots in homes right away. That made me think of sort of like a Wall-E, Terminator, Blade Runner. We're trying to replicate ourselves, but better. And we haven't quite beaten the clock. Even we become outdated, right? Robots, machines become outdated. It's like we keep trying to fight, that entropy that's coming for us all. And all of a sudden, like we do, we care when we get outdated. We feel the aches and pains and ask ourselves, when did I get this old? Why does that hurt now? And now you've got robots that were allegedly created not to be sentient beings, but to just be at our beck and call, and I think, we see where that is ending up. You guys have just read the 4th issue, and there's some things that occurred earlier on in the series. One thing that I'll mention here, just for some perspective, you guys may have seen it referred to in the book as the Orlando incident. The Orlando incident was what occurred. If if there was, I'm pretty sure there was a reference to it. The robots down there erected a bubble over the city and cut off the oxygen supply and killed the entire city of Orlando, sort of as an opening salvo to, we just want equal rights. And that was their move to demonstrate to humanity that they were serious. So what did humanity do? We're getting away from building robots that look like robots, that look like machines, where we don't care about them. And now we're creating mandroids. We're putting a happy face on a machine. making it look even more human.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's really heading down a road, and and I think it contains elements of everything we've seen before, just really repackaged. And this is only about 30 years in the future for some additional perspective. If you guys hadn't gotten that from that issue, it's in the year 2056.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
really not that far off. Although Blade Runner promised me in 2019 there'd be cars.
That's right.
And giant
I know
pyramids.
that hovercraft piece,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, they promised me there would be Chinese noodles in every corner.
Yes.
It would always be raining. And there would be a replicant in every home, but
That's right.
Well,
One thing I found interesting too is that when they made the mandroids, right? They made them obviously to look really, really human. But one of the things that they got rid of was their capacity for violence. And what I liked though is that when we tried to create the most human version of ourselves in robot forms, they're ineffectual.
Right.
They can't help us. They're just they're standing by like, oh crap, like the whole violent, like when the revolution starts in there and everything, and the mandroids just kind of back off or run away. My suggestion to you is to get as far away as possible.
Yeah,
Right.
I think one of them said, I'm sorry this is happening to you," as they're running away, right?
Yes.
Right.
I was like, dang, that's cold.
It was like they created some empathy chip that even the humans don't have.
Right.
How did you do? Now we could just install those in human brains. We might have something. No, we had to create a whole new species of machines to care.
Right.
But we had to get rid of Orlando to prove it. So
Yeah, there you go.
So definitely that tidbit that you added about that dome, again, us just reading the one issue, no clue of that dome, but that that is a huge significance, right? And
yeah,
I think it's, again, to me, I always love, I think Shane, you're the one that said that when sci-fi brings this out, it's amazing. And it is, because we think about, we want an easier life, we want more relying on technology, but then at some point, what happens if that technology doesn't agree with our beliefs or threatens us? And then by then it's the whole AI piece of it, where we're like, wow, we want smarter things, more technology, easier life, but then exactly as someone mentioned, right, Terminator at some point, right, where they think on their own. And it's really actually that sci-fi piece, I think, through the decades, right, we've talked about how sci-fi is kind of a time machine for what could be occurring in the future, and AI has always been a piece of that, whether it be a Terminator or a comic or Wall-E or whatever. I think that's what makes them so they reach out and grab you sometimes, just with that idea of this this could be one of our potential futures, right? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that's what made Twilight Zone such an incredible series that still lasts today. I mean, Rod Serling he had this ability to use science fiction and fiction story writing to paint this broader picture of subjects that he really couldn't even talk about in general open at that time period, which was brilliant on his part. So yeah,
Shane, I don't know if you guys know, Rod Serling was a veteran, and he had nightmares, and the Twilight Zone was actually a way for him to deal with the nightmares that he had, which was crazy, because I don't think that was acknowledged at the time. I don't know if anyone ever made that connection, but here we are years later talking about it. It's still, I mean, we use it like we do any other word. You're so crazy, you're in the Twilight Zone. It's we actually use it as like a state of mind, and I mean, so it's pretty crazy. So looking at a book like this, like I said, there's so many elements that we've seen before, but what I liked about it was just totally grounded. There was no supernatural. There was no, it was kind of like a slow burn. It's kind of like, you could tell that their robot at home was not very happy. And you're like, why does this robot so unhappy? Why does he care? And then he goes to work, and there's other robots, and they're all bitching and moaning, and you're thinking, this is not going to end well.
Right.
So they never really show you. They never really show you in all these movies the robots around the water cooler bitching about their humans.
Right.
And when I saw that, I was like, this is not going to go well. So, I mean, you guys have seen the cover of number 4. you've got, the robot, you've got him standing in the doorway with the family like terrified to sleep,
Mhm.
and you're like, there's a lot of technology. I love the Tony Stark stuff, but I'm not ready for facial recognition or retina scanning just yet. I love the
Right.
idea.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just, I mean, we're sitting here on a Zoom call, and Shane and his infinite bag of technical toys there could make us say and do things we would never say and do. Although maybe that's not true. Maybe at one point we would have all said and done them, just not lately. But that the whole thing. So for me, this book is really, like you guys have said, and I really appreciate you guys catching all of those allegories like I did. Is I think it's basically these guys, creators, really school. Mike Deodato has been around comics a while, and he just has a way of picturing things. Shane and I were talking about a little earlier. I think it would be better maybe to have been a longer series, or maybe even a little concise. There's a lot in every panel, which I think pulls back a little bit, but still a pretty high quality story. And I think the humans are definitely second tier players in this.
Yeah. Speaking of the panels, I'd like to touch. Hopefully, we can touch on the artwork too.
Yeah, let's do it.
I really loved that. The lettering was so cool to me. Like I'm a bad co-host here. I didn't remember the name of the letter, and I didn't wanted to talk about it. But I love the lettering because like when you see the conversations between the humans or the robots or even the mandroids, there's like a very distinct look to each and a feel to each of those.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that, and it was kind of a newer way to approach it. It wasn't your typical robot lettering, all square block letters or anything, but it still gave you that sense of like human versus machine, and vice versa.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I like the they actually kind of make fun of you even of the social media with their talking bot show.
Oh yeah, I thought that was really clever. Actually,
they have a robot on and they have a person on, and there's kind of that interaction. You keep thinking the robot's person's going to be talking, and you're just going to see this metal spike shoot right through their head. Like conversation terminated, human.
Right.
I was waiting for it. But so the letterer is named Stephen Wands, like a magic wand. I've never heard of him before. The writer Mark Russell and artist Mike Deodato, they both work for Marvel and some of the other companies, so I'm familiar with Deodato. Was on a book that Marvel I think is ending called Savage Avengers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's basically like it's crazy. It started out as a team trying to fight Kulan Goth, a wizard, a warlord, with Conan, Wolverine, Elektra, the Punisher. It was pretty crazy, but Mike was the artist on that. So when he was the artist on this, I really liked it. One thing, like I mentioned though, I think they're trying to shove a lot in each panel. It's still really attractive stuff, but yes, I agree with everything you said, Ben.
Yeah, I think definitely there's some warrant to rereads, right? To me, it's almost like sometimes when we hear of a movie or a book coming out, we might get a little bit of insight from other folks that have maybe reviewed it and their take on it. But I think sometimes when you yourself pick up a book or watch a movie numerous times, there are definitely, as you said, Paul, there's things that there's so much content and so much, there might be some things that just go right over my head, and it's like, oh, well, let me look at this again, and that sometimes is even more enjoyable, of course, the second or third time when you travel back and pick up those little nuances, little items, little details. So
I don't know that I don't know if there's a comic that I pick up on Wednesdays that I don't read a second time before I bag it and board it. Just say I did, just to say, let me make sure I soak all that in. Let me get my $4.99 worth or whatever.
Absolutely.
My girlfriend laughs because I'm here reading, the books and stuff, and she's like, "How long does it take you to look at one panel?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to take it all in. There's not just the words. There's like all the stuff in the back. You got to make sure you're capturing."
Well, you think about it from like this standpoint. We didn't think about this like when we were kids, because I think the art was geared more towards us at that age. But I think the art now is geared towards our generation that appreciates the more intricate details and sort of the subtle things that are on each panel and from page to page. And, we wouldn't have picked up on that at 10 years old, but I mean, it's to me, if the artist is going to take the time to draw it, I'm going to take the time to look at it. You know what I mean? I don't just go word bubble to word bubble. And especially with books like these that we picked out, if you did that, I think you'd really be cheating yourself,
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's an important point about, the comic book medium in general.
Absolutely.
Just looking at it from an artistic and storytelling standpoint, we've got traditional novels where there's just text on a page, to cinema where you've got motion pictures and audio, and comic books is a unique art form in that you've got this combination of art and dialogue and the way and a way that each one of those artists, just like you're saying, the letterer has their own thing that they bring to the table, which has obviously had an impact on you, Ben, just the way that it helped tell the story. And I don't think it's just the writer or just the artist or just the letterer or just the inker or just the colorist. It's everybody brings their best stuff to the table to help communicate this story. So that's what I think is unique about comic books in general.
Yeah, it rides the line. You don't need to, and I don't mean this in a negative sense. You don't need to use as much imagination as you do for a novel, because you have to sort of envision what's going on the page. And if the author, the writer, isn't as descriptive or as crystal clear or just has the talent for that, it's going to be hard to visualize what's going on. And in a movie, you can just let your eyes do all the absorption. But a comic book, the writer, can write that script. The artist has to translate it and create momentum to keep it moving forward, because one or two bad panels can really cause you to lose interest, even if the script is good. So they really have to, it's kind of like a dance, right? The script has to be good and the art has to move you page to page. I don't know if I've read in years, because I'm a little more selective, but there's books now I would go back, and I've had, guys say to me, guys in our, comic book circles say things like, yeah, I miss those Spider-Man comics of the 80s. And I'm like, I really don't. I enjoyed reading them at the time, but I think, and I loved, John Romita Jr. and those guys. But if I read, one more, Reed Richards calling Sue Storm darling, I'll just pull my own eyeballs out. Well, you're absolutely right there, darling. What we must do. And I'm just like,
yeah.
Come on, Stan. Nobody talks like that, Stan was trying to write the great American novel into the 2000s, Love him to death, but it was, it was a cultural thing, right? And I think these books are, and that's what I thought you guys would enjoy these, because I thought, with us being all real close in age, we've all kind of had similar, observations on what's going on in the world and the culture around us and the way things are going. And all three of these books kind of speak to a little bit of that. So I was glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very much so.
Just real quick, I want to jump back to this idea of what they're trying to talk about in the book and the allegories. As we're sitting here talking, it just dawned on me, and you, Paul, you mentioned something that sort of triggered this, but I'm wondering if
I triggered you.
You trigger me a lot, Paul.
Look out.
I'm wondering if, this idea that it seemed like none of the humans had to work because the robots went out and did the work. So I'm wondering if what they're saying is that the humans sort of became expendable, and then this first round of robots now have become expendable, and now we're into the mandroids. And at a certain point, if you continue down that path, that the mandroids then would become expendable. If that's this whole idea of we're all expendable.
And who wins?
Yeah.
And who wins in that?
Yeah. And who's really in control? Corporations.
What are they called? Inhuman corporations or something. I mean, they're the ones that win. And so I think that's sort of the umbrella this all falls under, is the corporation's going to keep moving forward. It's just when humans die out and can't work, they'll just make more machines. When machines die out, they'll just make more machines. And I see that probably, in my everyday, career, and I've seen it around where things are becoming more and more automated. So I think this kind of speaks to that. And that's why I kind of made the joke on Wall-E, if you guys remember seeing that, I saw that with kids, and I thought it's kind of a serious topic for little kids. It was more geared like toward the humans, like hey, knuckleheads, look what you're doing to your kid's world. You know, it's,
Yeah.
I know, but I'm one guy. What do you want? I recycle. What do you want?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
rinse my plastic cups. What do you want?
All right, so for Not All Robots, I'm gonna for artwork, I will give it 5 of 5 stars. I really loved the artwork. I thought it was really fun, and especially I know it sounds kind of funny talking about artwork, but I go back to the lettering. That's a piece of art in there, and that really impressed me. For story, I'm gonna go 4, and that's the reason why I'm knocking off a bit is I as we said earlier, it does feel like they've combined some stuff from past stories. It's a great story, great allegory, but I feel like there was not a ton of originality for me. So, but 4 there, and then overall, I would give it a 4.
Great.
What do you think, Mike?
I'm very, very similar. I think story was great. Again, myself having just read the one issue and not the series of books, it definitely had some self-containment story to it. Has been mentioned, you know, relying on some past story, which, you know, that's typical comic. You know, the lovely little asterisk in the old days, 70s and 80s, right? Asterisk C, the such and such issue. You know, those things have always been around, and certainly, you know, I think we all understand that. So I'd say a 4.5 on story. Artwork, I love the artwork. I love some of the panels, and again, to Ben's note on the lettering and just bringing the complete picture together. I'll give it 4 stars, and overall, a 4, solid 4. Very good piece of artwork and reading for sure.
All right, Paul.
All right. So for writing, I'm going to give it, you know, a 4. Again, it does pull from some other elements. So there's some familiarity, but enough originality there, I think, with some of the characters and some of the, just the way it kind of, you know, like I said, it gave you that insight into the robots more. Usually they're just seen as the villain, and you don't see that other side, but we saw them, like I said, around the water cooler, so to speak. So I like that. So for the writing, I'm going to give it a solid 4. For the art, I like the art. I think it's really good. I think there's some elements that maybe make some of the panels a little crowded. So I'm going to go with a 4 on that. And so an overall of 4. But overall, a really good story. And of course, I have the perspective of reading all 4 issues so far. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
All right. Well, I'm going to be the hard guy. Unfortunately, I'm going to reserve my 5s and 4s for things that just really blow me out of the water. You know, for me, art wise, I wasn't totally blown away by the artwork. I felt like sometimes I couldn't tell the difference between the main characters, and for a couple of panels, I couldn't even really tell who the main characters were. Yeah. So, and like the difference between the mandroids and the humans, definitely there was like a little confusion there for me. And anytime that pulls me out of the story, that, you know, so I went 3 out of 5 on the art. And then writing, I agree with everything everybody said. I went 3 out of 5 on that. But, you know, it's interesting just having this conversation and talking with all of us. I think this happens a little bit with art too. When you have discussions and it brings more to the table, and you realize, oh, maybe I missed something. And now, you know, I might go back and reevaluate my score on the writing, but I did a 3 out of 5 initially. I might go back and reread the entire 5-issue collection, and that might change my opinion of the whole thing. But overall, I gave it a 3, which is, you know, right in the middle. It's not like bad. I think it's good, but it wasn't like it you know, knocked my socks off 100%. But I think it's an interesting idea. Now that we've talked about it, like I said, I might go back and reevaluate, but that's where I would land. So
I'd like to just jump in just for a second on your point to the being difficult to differentiate between some of the characters, right? I was a little frustrated at first with that too, I'll admit. But I started thinking about it. And what is it to be a machine, a cog in the machine? You're just one more piece. And that's why, like, I've noticed the robots were kind of difficult to tell apart. Maybe if you look at closely at their hands, or you know, whatever their usefulness is. some of the people, the humans to mandroids, there was no differentiators. And I almost felt like that was on purpose. I don't know if it was, but I took it to be like, I was trying to, give some points to the artist, be like, okay, they chose this, and everybody kind of had a similar look. But I felt like, because when you tie it into the rest of the allegory, it seemed to fit to me. So, but it could be just, another book we're going to review later is about conspiracy theories, and they're piecing the things together that aren't necessarily supposed to go together. Maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to paint my own picture.
You know what, Ben? I mean, that's a good point. Mike Deodato's art in other avenues has been really, really outstanding. And of course, obviously the inker and colorist have a lot to do with that too, but I think he's capable. And so I think there's something to maybe your blurring of the lines, so to speak. He's trying to, and that might be, and again, Shane, your rating is completely fair. I mean, that's, it's in the eye of the beholder. And if that's not an obvious, if that's not an intentional design by him, and he doesn't come out and say that, it's going to be hard to detect. So Ben, I appreciate you bringing that up. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, this was fantastic. I thank you for suggesting this, Paul. I really appreciate it. This was a great read. And I think it's definitely worth checking out. Since it's only 5 issues, it's definitely worth checking out all 5. And so, all right. That was great. First episode in the can.
Nice.
On to the next one. Well, that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the reviews, and please subscribe and click the thumbs up button. That really helps us out a lot. We can keep bringing you new content and new reviews, and we'll see you on the next one.